The first thing I remember was the beep. Slow, steady, distant, like the world was breathing for me. Then the ache came, like something sharp tucked behind my eyes, and voices, muffled, rushed, hopeful. She's stable, the swelling's down, keep monitoring. I didn't recognize anyone. My throat was dry. I tried to speak, but only a groan came out. A nurse leaned over me and smiled gently. Hi, Chloe. You're okay. You're safe now. Safe. I didn't know I'd been in danger. I drifted in and out. Faces blurred. Lights shifted. At one point, I heard Mom's voice. Cracked. Softer than I ever remembered it. And then, I heard something that didn't make sense. Yeah, the lead surgeon was her sister. Pretty amazing she kept it together, honestly. That stopped everything inside me. My sister? I tried to sit up, but my body betrayed me. Tubes, tapes. A dull pain wrapped around my head like a too tight headband. They couldn't mean her. Meredith? No. We hadn't spoken in, I don't know, years maybe? Not really. There were text chains about holidays, group photos I'd tag her in out of obligation. She never replied. She'd always been distant, cold. At least that's what Mom said. Meredith was born serious. She came out with a clipboard. We laughed about it growing up. I believed it. The way she'd disappear into books, skip family dinners, roll her eyes when I told jokes. She didn't like hugs, didn't cry at movies, and she sure didn't make anyone feel warm. And now? She was the one who held a scalpel over my head? I squeezed my eyes shut, as if that could erase the weight pressing down. But the images came anyway. I remembered falling down the stairs when I was 6. The pain, the blood on my knee. Meredith had been there, tall, awkward, 12 years old, with her weird science kit. She rushed over, trying to stop the bleeding with tissues and scotch tape. Her hands were shaking. Mom had stormed in and snapped, "Don't play doctor, Meredith. You'll make it worse." She took me away without even saying thank you. That night, Meredith stayed in her room. I thought it was because she was mad. Now I wonder if she was hurt. The hospital room was silent when I opened my eyes again. A clock ticked somewhere. My vitals beeped calmly. I asked for water. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. A nurse helped me sip through a straw. I tried to ask, was it really her? The nurse didn't answer, just adjusted my pillow and said, "Rest now. You're lucky. You had one of the best." One of the best. Meredith. My sister. God. What kind of person saves your life and doesn't even tell you? A few days later, when I was strong enough to sit upright, Mom brought me a tablet and said, "Look, there's an article about the surgical team. No names mentioned, but they did good." I scrolled. There was a blurry picture of surgeons around an operating table, and a caption, "Estranged sister saves her own, without fanfare or fame." It hit like a brick. She didn't just save me, she didn't even want credit. I asked Mom, "Was Meredith here?" She looked away. She came. She left. That was it. Later, when Ethan visited, I asked again, "Did you know it was Meredith?" He hesitated. "Yeah, I saw her through the glass. She didn't say anything, just stood there. Then she left." Why? I think she didn't want to be seen. I stared at the wall for a long time. I remembered how many birthdays she missed, or rather, how many I thought she missed. Now I wondered, had she been there and I just never looked? That evening I opened my social media and searched her name. Nothing new, just her hospital credentials, an old photo of her at some conference, a few congratulatory posts from colleagues. Then I saw it, a comment under one of the hospital's internal newsletters. Dr. Rowe performed a near impossible procedure, quiet, focused, no ego. You could tell she wasn't in it for applause. That was Meredith, always invisible. And maybe we made her that way. I felt something sting at the back of my throat. I clicked open our last text thread. It was 3 years ago. I'd sent, "Hey, Mom says come home for Christmas if you're not busy." She'd responded, "Thanks, I'm working." I'd laughed about it at the time. Classic Meredith, too cold to care. But maybe she was caring, just not in ways I understood. The next morning, I asked for a pen and paper. I didn't know what I wanted to write. An apology? A thank you? A scream? What came out was messy and small. I don't know what to say. Just, thank you. I didn't deserve it. But you did it anyway. I see that now. I see you. I folded it up, addressed it simply, Meredith, and handed it to Ethan. He nodded. "She probably won't answer," he warned. "I know," I said, "but she'll read it." They said I was recovering well. My vitals were strong, speech returning, balance, almost there. But inside, something hadn't settled. It wasn't the injury. It was the question that kept circling me like fog. Why didn't she say anything? She saved my life, performed a surgery so delicate it could have left me unable to walk or speak, and then vanished, like she didn't exist, like I didn't matter. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I pulled strings to get a look at the surgical roster. It wasn't easy. HIPAA rules, privacy concerns. But the right nurse, the one who remembered Meredith's quiet efficiency, gave me a discreet nod. There it was. Attending surgeon, Dr. Meredith Rowe. She'd stayed on shift for 12 hours after the surgery, never once requested family to be notified. She didn't even leave a note. I sent her a message that night. "Was it really you?" It said seen, nothing more. I sat there staring at the screen, hoping maybe the dots would appear, that she'd be typing, explaining, laughing at how dramatic I was being. But they never came. Instead, the silence stretched, heavy and sharp. Mom asked me a few days later if I wanted to come home and recover. I said no. "Meredith's still in town, you know," she added, almost like it was a warning. I nodded. I'm not ready to talk to her. The truth was, I didn't know what I'd say. How do you apologize to someone for decades of erasing them? How do you tell them you believed the worst? Not because it was true, but because it was easier than wondering what was. Ethan visited and brought food. I asked him about her. He hesitated. Then, "You know, she didn't even want her name on the post-op report." "What do you mean?" "She told the staff she was just filling a gap, that it wasn't important who she was." That hit different. I decided to go see her. She was back on duty when, of course, the woman barely stopped working. I waited outside the hospital cafeteria until I saw her walk by. Same straight posture, same blank expression. White coat, ID badge, surgical clogs. I called out, "Meredith." She paused, just for a second only, then turned. Our eyes met. Hers didn't soften, didn't narrow, just stayed level. "I know it was you," I said. She nodded. "Okay. Why didn't you say something?" She shifted her bag higher on her shoulder. "Because you didn't need me to." That made me flinch harder than I expected. "I needed to know," I whispered. "You're my sister." She looked away. Not when it mattered. Not for a long time. Silence. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the letter I'd written. The one I rewrote 3 times before giving up and scribbling it on the back of a lab printout. I held it out. She didn't take it. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," I said. "I just want you to know I see you now." She finally looked back at me. "I don't need you to see me. I needed you not to disappear when I did." And then she walked away. Later, I stopped by her apartment building, just to see where she lived. There was no name on the buzzer, just a unit number. On the mailbox in tiny printed font, M. Rowe, do not forward. Not even Dr. Rowe. Just minimal. Erased. I didn't ring. A week later, we received an RSVP for a medical staff appreciation event. It was being hosted by our family, a formality to thank the team that saved me. Meredith's name wasn't on the invite list. I asked Mom about it. She shrugged. She didn't respond. Maybe she's too busy. But I knew she wasn't busy. She just didn't want to show up to a party where her name wouldn't be spoken. Again. The day of the luncheon, I looked for her, scanned the crowd, nurses, residents, even the chief of surgery. Nothing. Until halfway through, behind a column near the exit, I caught a glimpse of her, navy blazer, paper cup in hand, standing alone. I wanted to walk over, to drag her to the table, but I didn't. Something in her posture told me, don't. When Mom took the mic to give the speech, her words were calm, polished. We're deeply grateful to this hospital. The miracle we received will never be forgotten. She thanked departments, teams, even logistics staff, but not one word for the woman who held the scalpel over her daughter's skull. I looked toward the column. Meredith was already gone. That night, I sent her one last message. You didn't have to disappear again, not this time. She responded, I never disappeared. I just got tired of standing where no one looked. Her silence was never cold. It was armor, forged from every time she screamed in her own way, and no one listened. I've thought a lot since then about what love looks like when it's not loud. It looks like 12-hour shifts and unclaimed surgeries. It looks like walking away instead of demanding thanks. It looks like showing up, even when no one invites you. And sometimes it looks like disappearing just far enough to survive. The day of the memorial came with sun and silence. We were saying goodbye to Grandpa, the only person who ever called Meredith his star. He used to say it when no one else was listening. That girl's got gravity in her bones. Don't let them crush it out of her. But no one listened, not even me. The service was held at Grand Redwood Hall. Velvet drapes, white lilies, a slideshow of memories playing on loop. I walked past the photo table, scanning the frames. There was a large portrait of me at high school graduation, one of Ethan with Mom at his wedding, and one photo, grainy, crooked, with 3 kids at the beach. Me in the center, beaming, Ethan with sand on his face, Meredith at the far edge, half her face cut off by the frame. Someone nearby squinted at the picture. Who's that on the left? Mom answered too quickly. Oh, some distant cousin. I didn't say anything, but I felt something sharp twist in my chest. We sat through the music, the prayers, the quiet sobs. Then came the family tributes. Mom stood first. She spoke with the kind of poise I'd always envied. Talked about legacy, resilience, and how family pulls through in times of crisis. She thanked Ethan for supporting her, me for surviving, and the hospital staff for their professionalism. Not once did she say Meredith's name. I felt Ethan shift beside me. His fingers tapped the program like he was trying to find words he wouldn't say. I almost stayed quiet. I really did. But then Uncle Robert, Grandpa's older brother, cleared his throat from the second row. I just want to say something. The room turned toward him. I want to thank my niece, Dr. Meredith Rowe, for saving Chloe's life. Seems like the family forgot. The silence was immediate and full of heat. I saw Mom's jaw tighten. She gave a tight-lipped smile. Well, it was her job, wasn't it? That broke something in me. I stood up. Not out of rage, out of necessity. No, it wasn't just her job. It was her sister. Every eye turned to me. My voice shook at first, but I didn't stop. She didn't do it for praise. She didn't do it for thanks. She did it while you all ignored her name, erased her from every room. Someone shifted in the back. I caught a blur of navy blue. Meredith. Standing near the exit, half in shadow, I kept going. I used to think Meredith didn't care, but now I know. She cared so deeply, she bled for us in silence. I pulled a folded slip of paper from my purse, the letter I never mailed. I opened it with shaky fingers. This is what I wrote the night I found out she saved me. I see you now. I'm sorry it took a scalpel and near death for me to look. No one moved. She didn't just save me. She's the reason any of us are sitting here pretending we're whole. After I stepped down, I passed by Meredith quietly in the hall. She didn't speak. She just handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photocopy of something I hadn't seen in years, her high school essay. Title, The Hero in My Life. First line, my little sister has a light I never had, but if she ever needed it, I'd be the steady darkness under her feet, so she could shine. I didn't remember her ever writing that, but it was real. Typed, dated, signed, Meredith R., 11th grade. I pressed the paper to my chest like it could fix something. A few days later, I got a call from a local news blog. They'd picked up a story from the medical journal. Estranged sister saves her own, but stays silent. They asked for a quote. I gave them one line. Sometimes heroes don't want a headline. They just want to be allowed in the room. The article went mildly viral. People shared it with captions like sister goals and silent strength. But the comment that stuck with me was from someone I'll never know. You don't have to raise your voice when your actions speak louder than bloodlines. She wasn't invisible. We just didn't look because it was easier not to owe her anything. Later that week, I stopped by her building. I didn't buzz. I just slid the essay copy back under her door with a sticky note that said, "You were always holding me up. Now let me stand for you." I don't know if we'll ever be close. There's too much history. Too many years where I lived in the sun because she stood in the shade. But now, at least I know where she stood. 6 months passed. Life moved on in the way it always does. Quiet, mechanical, unforgiving. I'd gone back to work, but something about me had changed. Or maybe someone in me had woken up. One evening, I stayed late after a patient consult and walked past a college campus near the hospital. The flyer caught my eye. Intro to Surgical Ethics, Professor Meredith Rowe. My breath caught. I hadn't known she left the trauma unit. But then again, Meredith never announced her moves. She just moved. Teaching. It suited her. She'd always explained things better than most doctors. Not with flair, but with precision. Calm. Patient. I wanted to see her. But not in a hallway, not in passing. I wanted to understand the version of her that wasn't covered in hospital ID tags and other people's dismissals. So I sat in on her class the next week, quietly, in the back row. I didn't check in, didn't warn her. She didn't see me at first. She was too focused. The classroom was small, the kind of place with chalky whiteboards and broken ceiling fans. She stood at the front, wearing plain slacks and a loose sweater, no white coat, no badge. Just her voice and a room of young women listening like their futures depended on it. "You'll be expected to care for patients who won't remember your name," she said. "Do it anyway. You'll be told you're too cold, too serious, too much. Be all those things, and be excellent." The room was still. No one blinked. She didn't speak like someone trying to impress. She spoke like someone who knew. On her desk, I noticed a framed photo, tucked behind a pile of syllabi. It was of me, lying in the ICU, half conscious, my hand in hers. It wasn't posed, it wasn't for show, it was proof. I left before the class ended. I wasn't ready to be seen, not yet. But I wrote her a letter that night. "You've spent your life holding everyone else up, while we convinced ourselves you didn't feel anything. But I see now, your silence wasn't absence. It was endurance." A week later, she texted, "Mom's having some tests run. Nothing urgent. Just thought you should know." I asked if she was okay. She replied, "She doesn't want company, but I'll go because I can handle the silence." I offered to meet her at the hospital anyway. When I arrived, Meredith was already there, sitting beside Mom, who looked impossibly small in the exam chair. They didn't speak. But I could feel the distance between them shrinking. Not gone, just less jagged. After the appointment, we sat on a bench outside, next to the vending machines and the smell of cafeteria coffee. I asked her, "Did she ever say she was proud of you?" Meredith sipped from her paper cup, then said, "No, but she once told me I was like my dad." That used to feel like a curse. Now I think it's the closest she ever came to admiration. We sat for a while, not talking, just breathing in the same air for once. I asked her, "Do you miss surgery?" She shrugged. "Sometimes." "Why'd you leave?" She paused. "I got tired of saving people who only remembered the miracle, not the hands that made it happen. I nodded. I understood now, more than I ever had. Later that month, I was invited to speak on a patient experience panel, a small conference. Nothing fancy. But I requested one specific person to attend as a guest, Meredith. She declined at first, said she didn't like microphones or attention, but she showed up anyway, sat near the back, like always. When it was my turn to speak, I stood at the podium and took a breath. There was a time I thought being loved meant being celebrated, but now I know sometimes it's the person standing in the back, the one who never claps for themselves, who loves you the most. People clapped politely, but Meredith didn't clap. She just looked at me, steady, eyes not cold, just tired in a way that made you want to give her the whole world and say, "Rest now, I see you." A few days after the panel, Mom called, said something about paperwork, updating her living will. She casually mentioned she left me the house. "And what about Meredith?" I asked. "She doesn't need anything. She's fine. Always has been." I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. Later, I wrote Mom a letter, not angry, just firm. "She's not fine. She just never asked. That doesn't mean she deserves less. It means you owe her more. She never wanted to be the favorite. She just didn't want to be forgotten." Last week, I went back to her classroom, this time during office hours. She was grading papers. I walked in and placed a coffee on her desk, the kind she always ordered, strong, no sugar. She looked up. "I don't need thanks," she said. "I know," I replied. "This isn't thanks." She raised an eyebrow. "It's acknowledgement." She smiled. Barely. But it was there. That night, I framed the essay she wrote when she was 17. My little sister has a light I never had, but if she ever needed it, I'd be the steady darkness beneath her feet. She kept her promise. Now it's my turn.